Goeienaand en welkom, baie dankie dat julle ingeskakel het by Klipkop. Ter ouder gewoonte, op 'n Sondag aan 7:00 lees ons uit The Journal of Jan van Riebeeck in Her Majesty the Queen's Vernacular. Laasweek het daar nie te veel gebeur nie. Dis basies daar by Dussen Eiland het ons 'n klomp graan en goedjies gaan plant om te kyk of dit daar wil groei nie. Die ouens sukkel om graanprodukte aan die Kaap self te groei. Hulle het ook daar so 'n klein huisiekie opgeslaan. Hulle is nou 24/7 besig daar om robbe dood te slaan vir hulle pelse en hulle vet wat hulle afkook na sogenaamde train oil toe. Maar voordat ons in die boek inspring, wil ek graag 'n lousie vir die mensies in die kletskolom. Ek wil heel eers 'n goeie naam sê aan Mike en Finnie Simpson. Mike het vir my 'n DM gestuur en hy sê vir my hulle krag is al van donderdag aand af. So dis die hele Vrydag, die hele Saterdag, die hele Sondag. 3 dae sonder krag. Wat gaan aan daar in die ou Transvaal met die krag? Laat my weet. Christoph Oukamp, ek is hier, yes Christoph man, kwaai lekker. Brendan Campbell, kyk net in jou deskripsie, dis beskrywing, nie deskripsie nie, verskoon my. Kyk net in jou beskrywing, is jy nog op episode 15 se informasie. Dis actually vandag se informasie, dis net van, ek vergeet elke keer om daai getalletjie te update. Ek sal, ek dink ek moet dit verander na in hierdie episode, net klaar. Daai is dalk 'n beter idee. Bebop Williams is ook iets vir lekker boys, as ook Zekat Blitz replays. Salut my vriend. Rode Truiter, ek het lanklaas vir Rode Truiter in die kletskolom gesien. Ons lees so baie van die Rode Vos in die boekie laaste tyd. En het ons nou vir Rode homself. RJJ, aware, RJJ, hoe lyk hulle? Blauwbal, Rode, wat ek, Brendan Campbell sê vir ons, Hos Pakamis. Hospakamis, die hoender is gevries. Domina Morgul sê sy gaan maar net moet luister. Ek weet nie wat gaan aan daar in Engeland wat Domina Morgul net kan luister nie. Bebop sê ek sal maar die replay moet kyk. Is daar fout aan julle kant? Hoekom val al die soldate nou so een na die ander? Ok, ek gaan gou 'n slukkie vir my koffie vat, dan gaan ek my kameraatjie opstel. Bebop Williams het die intro musiek gemis. Jy kan hom gaan Google, dit is... ek is nou nie seker, dit is een van Nico van Rensburg se nommers. Want ek nou nie vir julle lieg nie. Kom ek sit so lank vir julle hier. Daar is die boek. Hallo. Sit nog gou op die desktop. Hierdie ouetjie se beentjies oopmaak. En so aan. Julle moet nou nie skarwe gedagtes kry, ek nou hier praat van beentjies oopmaak nie. Asseblief mense, dit is 'n familiekanaal. As sit ons gou hierdie ouetjie aan, en dan moet ek hom net gou vir hom sê, properties, configure video, dan by camera control, moet ek gaan in die focus stel, na omtrent so 20 toe, laat die ding nie aan mekaar in en uit focus in, julle raak later dan moeilik vir my. Kyk hoe lê die as hier so op die boek. 'n geskiedkundige boek, amper 50 jaar oud, wag nee, hoe oud is hierdie boek al? Hierdie boek is in 52 uitgereik. So hy is al amper 70 jaar oud is hierdie boek. So toen rook ek sigarets boor om. Lekker man, lekker. Ek gaan hier so sê, Ok, dan gaan ek die skerm oortrek na die kant, dan kan ek lekker saam lees. En nou ons is nou al by 16:55, kan julle meer, kan julle nou meer, dit voel soos net nou die dag, wat die dromedaris hier aangeland het. Julle kan sien, 16:55 het baie rustig afgeskop. En hierso is so 'n interessante stukkie op die 6de wat ek raak gelees het. Hulle sê dat at about 1.5 hours after noon, we received news from the lookouts that there was a ship off the coast, and shortly afterwards the galleot Thom came to anchor in the roadstead. She is back from the Saldanha Bay and the Dussen Island with about 4,000 sealskins and 3 firkins of train oil. Nou, hier is nou Jan Woutersen, copy of the letter dated 5 January 1655, written by the assistant Jan Woutersen from the Dussen Island to the commander and officers of the fort of the Good Hope. Nou, as julle graag daar wil deurlees, dit is nie te interessant hierdie stukkie nie. Ons gaan nou by 'n baie interessante stukkie kom, by die strafreg. Dis maak my nou alweer vriende van Jan Blanks, wat 'n bietjie moeilikheid gemaak het hier aan die Kaap. We are now sending your honor 2,000 skins and 3 firkins of train oil. We would have sent your honor more of the oil, but owing to the lack of casks, we are unable to do so. If we had casks, would have had at least 12 lagers more. En hulle sê ook so far as the garden is concerned, it will not succeed here on account of the intense heat and uncultivated soil. So hulle smaak my, hulle sommer met die intrapslag 'n bietjie probeer en toe gesien, nee, wat hulle kan maar los. Ons gaan nie graan gegroei kry hier op Dussen Eiland of rondom Saldanha nie. Nou, hierdie is nou waar hulle praat van Jan Simonsen. In a communication from skipper Jan Simonsen at the Saldanha Bay, we learned that they... ek lees dit mekaar. Kom ek begin vars. In a communication from the skipper Jan Simonsen at the Saldanha Bay, we learned that they were still busy killing seals on the islands, but that there would soon be no seals left to kill when they would return. Inter alia, also that on 19 December last, when the skipper had landed with some of the men on one of the islands for the aforesaid purpose, 2 men, namely a certain Theuns Aukesen and the other named Buisman, absconded with the large boat in which they had come there, went on board the galleot, which was guarded by 2 men and 1 boy, and robbed the same, as well as the skippers and their mates' chests of all victuals, copper, tobacco, wine, etc. Hulle het mos daardie skepe gestuur, juis om te kyk of daar nie Saldanhers in Saldanha Baai is, om vee met hulle te ruil, en so hulle het 'n klomp koper en goed saamgestuur, en het smaak my, hierdie ouens het nou die koper gesteel. Hulle gaan in meer detail in hierso, maar ons gaan dit nou uit die perd se bek uitlees. Ek sit dit net daar vir julle, vir completeness sake, wat presies daar gebeur het. Nogal 'n opwindende storie. Copy of a letter dated 3 January 1655, written by the skipper Jan Simonsen on the galleot Rode Vos from the Bay of Saldanha to the commander of the fort of Good Hope. Hulle sê so, every day some strandlopers came to us and told us that the Saldanhamen would come along with sheep and cattle to trade with us, but brought us one beast which we bartered from them, but there were no sheep to be obtained from them. Nou hier begin hulle met die storie. Ons gaan net nou die verklaring luister. Ek gaan dalk miskien hierdie een klein stukkie lees. When we had gone to the island to kill seals on 19 December, 2 sailors absconded with the large boat during the night and left us behind on an island without anything to eat or drink, as will be related further hereafter. I understand that Joachim Albertson was the author of this. I am anxious to have him confined at the first opportunity, as I have sufficient evidence. There is also a man having confessed that he intended to abscond with the galliot and that Joachim Albertson had been the ringleader, was placed in chains until we get back to the Cape, where we will produce written evidence of all that he had in mind had he completed this voyage. Nou toe ek nou hierdie stukkie lees, te wonder ek dadelik, hoekom sê hy moet hierdie ou vasgebind word? Was hy nie dan saam met hulle gewees nie? Dit kom toe uit hierdie Joachim Albertson. Hy was glad nie eers in Saldanha gewees nie. Maar hy is glo die skuldige party. En ons gaan nou duidelikheid daaroor kry. Nou hierso is die belangrike deel. Hierdie is nou die getuigskrif, wat die mense gesê het, wat gebeur, die testimony. On the 17th, I, the mate Cornelis Jansen, sent the boat with 2 sick men to the galliot, with a message to the skipper, 2 sailors, and the next morning they all went out to kill seals. They killed and cleaned 180. In the evening the men went to bed. 1 man was placed on guard and 1 man in the boat to see that it did not run on the rocks. In the morning before daybreak, the cook had to get water from the boat. He called that he could not manage by himself, so Turnus Auksen went to him without anybody's consent. When he arrived in the boat, he cut the drag rope, hoisted the sail, and steered for the galliot. When we discovered this, we consulted among ourselves how best we could get out of the difficult position, because we had not a drop of water with us, and there was no one with the courage to swim to the mainland. It was agreed that we could construct a raft from the scraping benches and the tent, as we had little timber with us. When the raft had been made, it was decided that the skipper and the 2 men would go on it, namely Klaas Bensing and Willem Eerle. When the 3 of us got on to the raft, it sank, so that it was necessary for one to get off. So the skipper and Klaas Bensing sailed over to the mainland, reaching a sandy bay where we drew up the raft. I, Jan Simonsen, and Klaas Bensing went overland until we came opposite the galliot, from where we saw the large boat was lying next to her, and that the small boat had been sunk. I consulted with Klaas Bensing about swimming over to the island close to the galliot, as he could swim well, and I could not swim a stroke. Jong, dit smaak my hierdie matroos en nie een van hulle kan swem nie. They agreed that he should go to the island and find out what they were doing, and if they stayed the night and spent their time getting drunk. Klaas Bensing would swim to the ship and get aboard during the night to try and get the boat from them, and artfully spy on them. Dit smaak my Klaas is die enigste klong tussen die klomp wat weet hoe om te swem. Should he get hold of the boat, he would afterwards come to me on the mainland, and if he had overpowered them, he would fire a shot or show a light as a signal that he had the upper hand. Thus the 2 of us had planned on the way, As Charles Benson reached the island, they left the side of the galliot, and I waved to him that he should do his best to reach the galliot. He got on board and found Abram and the sailmaker and the carpenter, and the ship stolen so bare of everything that very little remained. Klaas Benson and others who were on board got the boat refloated, and the 3 of them came to me. I jumped into, and we did our best to row out to sea along the island on which our men were. We rowed past the fugitives and got outside before they did. We got to the island and took on board fresh oarsmen and went after them. As we got nearer to them, they did their utmost and rowed towards the shore, where there was no safe landing on account of the rocks. Teunis Aukeson was drowned there, but Buisman reached the shore. They followed him for a long time, but he had hidden in a bush so that we could not find him. So daar's een van die ouens, een van die plunderaars, is daar's toe oorlede, hy het verdrink en die ander ou groep kruip in die bosse weg. We turned back to look for some of the goods, but we found nothing at all, except the large boat which had been battered in by the rocks. We got the boat ready again and returned on board. The next day we went to the island where our men were and brought them back, and it was agreed that we would fetch the skins and goods from the island and get ourselves ready to sail for the Cape with the first favourable wind. We could not stay any longer as our victuals were very scanty. The next day we went again to where they had run aground to look for any of the goods that might have been washed ashore, but found nothing. We found Buisman there stoned to death by Hottentots, with all his clothes removed, pitifully beaten, and with pieces cut from his face. We returned on board, leaving him lying there, all of which we, the undersigned persons, testify in fact to have taken place. En daar is al die mense. So dit smaak my, hulle die skip geloop besteel, een van die kleiner skepies gevat en al die kos en al die koper en daardie tipe goed het hulle geloop steel. En dit smaak my, hulle het met daardie klomp goed hulle op grond gegaan, die Hottentotte het daai ou beet gekry en hom doodgemaak. Heel waarskynlik weggemaak met al die koper en daardie tipe goed. Mense, dis al 20 oor. En ek het nou al baie streng gelees. My keel is eintlik droog. Droog sê ek vir julle. Belwel Piet is ook hier so, my genade aarde maase kind. Jy is mos 'n jetsetter deesdae, jy is nou die hele Weskaap vol gewees, die laaste paar weke. Die avonture van Belwel Piet. Nicolaas van Rensburg, siener of die ou van Nood vir Nood. Ek het 'n paar goedjies. Ek sien Jessie Randlehoff is ook hier, 'n goeie naam, Jessie Randlehoff. En Piet Vast het ook ingeloer, goeie naam, Piet Vast. Dankie dat jy ook ingekom sit vir julle hier voor my, kan ek beter sien. As julle lag, refresh net die page. Ja, ek sien, hy het nou so 'n bietjie geklok, maar hy is nou weer alright. Jou koffiekie is am lekker. Die weer is snaaks. Dit was vanoggend verskriklik warm, maar hier so in die middag, so enkie namiddag, toe kom daar 'n wolkbank oor en sluit al daai hitte in. Nou sit ons met hierdie bedompige hitte. En dan drink ek nog koffie ook. Ek het gedink, as ek so 'n smoke break vat, ek moenie boring wees. En net vir julle maak kyk hoe ek rookie. Kan julle sien die lockdown mense? O genade aarde. Kom ons draai hom so. Byt net gou vas. O koek. Vans al my goed. Sê. Het ek het 'n paar fotootjies gedeel. Maar dit smaak my die mense is nou half moeg vir hierdie lockdown, vir al die strande as die weer so is. Vir al die strande, hier het ek fotootjies. Wragtig, hier kom Belwel Piet heel eerste op my Twitter feed. Nou hierdie was nou 'n lange baan vandag. Nou vir die mense van die buiteland, hierdie wat nou hier gebeur, is heeltemal, wel, dis teen die COVID-regulasies, daar mag niemand op die strande wees nie. Maar julle kan sien hier in Langebaan vandag, het dit jolig gegaan op die strand. Soos wat 'n strand moet lyk, jy weet. So moet 'n strand lyk. Dis net snaaks, ek het amper niks kitesurfers gesien in die foto's hier. Ek sien nêrens 'n kite hier, dis baie ongewoon Langebaan. Maar ek ben die mense uitgekom, ek ben tot hierdie fris Chris hierso het 'n masker aan. Die ou bly binne sy. Die mense dra actually mask, dis so een of twee wat nie 'n maskertjie het nie. Maar ek weet soos julle sien, hierdie mense is keelvol. Hulle wil weer by die, just maar is 'n groot hondie. Hulle wil graag weer op die strand wees. En dis nie die enigste, ek is amper seker as ons net so gaan kyk. O ja, waar is my asbak? Hier is nog 'n videoetjie ergens, hierso. Hierdie ou het nogal mooi berig gegee. Hierdie was, ek dink, gister in Vishoek, as ek het nie mis het nie, ergens in die Kaap self,
Everywhere else around here, there's sand in our gardens. This area, everywhere in the suburbs here, sand. This is beach. So you're telling us we would actually have to leave. This is beach here. This is sand. We're all standing here. Is it any different? Is this any different? Please define the word for me. Please define the word. Define it then. No, wait. No, because you speak the word, I want you to tell me what the word defines. Define the word beach.
From this side here. Other side of the.
Can you show me that piece of paper that defines it? Logistically, where's it go there? Where does it say? Where are the lines drawn? Show me the piece of paper where the lines are drawn, where this is beach and that is not beach in Muizenberg. On Lakeside, on Berkeley, where there are palm trees. This is all beach. We're all living on the beach, man. That's a mountain there, you see that? Look.
People, I interrupted you, not to go on with you.
Daar sit die ouens en doen so 'n bietjie yoga. Ook. Hier in die Kaap doen ons dinge se anderster. Ons betoog deur om te yoga. Die ander spanne betoog deur om te dans. Ons betoog deur yoga. Ek druk altyd die verkeerde knoppie. Try daai ene. Weet die ou het nog 'n paar video's gehad. Okay, hier sê hy, This man refused to leave the water until police confiscated his shirt, flip-flops and cell phone. After demanding that it be returned, he was handed back his belonging. He stormed off angrily, warning, this video contains awkward scenes.
My property's down right now. Thank you.
Maar dit was nie net in die Kaap nie. Dit was nie net in die Kaap. Ek wil met Jeffries by was daar ook mense gewees. Kom ek kyk of ek dit kan kry. Ek moet nou ek het ergens gesien. Spel ek Jeffrey verkeerd? In elk geval, dit smaak my by Jeffrey's by, was daar ook. Het die mense ook op die strand uitgegaan. Kom ons kyk, wat het ek nou alles gemis hierso? Hoe god mense, dis warm, verskon tog. Ek is nou weer met julle. Ek moet net hier 'n bietjie oopmaak. Daai koppie koffie het my nog nie goed gedoen nie. Ek gaan hierdie deur ook oopmaak. Dit gaan nou 'n bietjie weer galm. Julle moet tog maar verskoon. Sjoe, blikslaag. Dis omtrent soos 'n sauna hier binne. Die vuil handdoek vat in my gesig af weer. Hoop maar ek kry nie COVID nie. Belwel Piet sê vir ons, ek het 'n voetsak ANC video gemaak op die beach. Ja, ek het jou mos 'n retweet gegee. In Hartenbos verlede week. Maar ek moes maar uitkyk vir die boere en vinnig wikkel. Al was dit stil en hulle nie in sig nie. Dat is bedompig, het voel omtrent ons bly nou in Durban. My genade aarde, er is hakie baan as ek so saluut my vriend. Ons veteraan chopper pilot. Ag, kom ons speel vir Belwel Piet sy video. Dat ek nou nie 'n ou saad is, het ek ook vir my bra uitsteek. Belwel Piet is ook een van die rebelle. Desktop is al goed, die kameraatjie af. Dan gaan ons home. Dink jy, waar is Belwel Piet se video? Man, dit sal mos op my, ek het hom mos geretweet. Het sal hier ergens wees. Mense in dit reën. Kyk hoe lyk dit in Limpopo. Kyk hoe lyk dit in Kuruman. Kyk hoe lyk dit in Ograbies. Dis net water. Onthou hulle nog 'n jaar terug. Toe was almal so, die zero is op pad, die zero is op pad. Klipkop was gewees, mense, hierdie is 'n El Niño tipe verskynsel wat ons sien. Die reën sal weer kom. Kyk daar hoe lyk dit. Dis net water. Hier is hy nou.
Vir Hugo nie. Hugo is weg vanoggend, jong. Ek sien nie vir Hugo nie. So ek skiem my syf. Lekker op die see. Jong, hey, wat is die, jong? My donder, wat is dit wat hier is? My fok. Wie het nou dit gedoen? Die skelm stout gatte. Die goed is weg
Ou
vanoggend,
Belbel
jong.
Piet, ons ou grapgat op, waar was dit? Harties, Hartendbos. Ok, waar wil ek nou wees? Ek wil daai afsit, dan wil ek hier gou hierso kom, diere terugtrek. Ek gesels te veel nonsens nou vanaand. Jesse Randolph, what do you think about our new Chinese-born minister? Wel, ek hoop die wêreld kan nou sien presies wie sit nou eintlik, wie is die rassiste in Suid-Afrika? Ek hoop die wêreld kan nou sien wie is die rassiste in Suid-Afrika. Ok, wat het ek gemis? Het ek iets belangrik gemis? Ok, ek sien nie nog Klipkops nie, en ek moet terugkeer na die boekie toe, anderster is dit vanaand nie eers 'n Jan van Riebeeck livestream nie. Daar gaat ons nou. Ok, ons het net nou gelees, ja, maar hier was nou ander manne gewees, hier is twee ouens, Teunus, Auksin en Buisman, en daar tipe ouens, het die skip gestil. Ons het nog niks van hierdie Joachim Albertson gehoor nie, maar dit smaak my, hy was, soos hulle sê, the ringleader gewees, maar hy was dan nie eers daar nie. Kom ons lees gou, wat sê hulle van Joachim Albertson. As we gathered from the above declaration that Joachim Albertson was supposed to have been the author of the piece of roguery just related, we had him brought from the forest where he was sawing wood. So hy is aan die Kaap self, hy is besig om hout te saag aan die Kaap, nie eens al dan aan baie waar die skepe gesteel was nie. Before he could be warned by the men and immediately apprehended and summoned before us, he admitted that he had taken part in discussing a plan to seize the galleot and to sail to either Brazil or Angola. But he denied expressly that he had been the author thereof, saying that the aforesaid persons who lost their lives, Buisman and Teunus Auksin, had been the principal authors. We shall shortly, however, receive more definite evidence per the galleot Rode Vos. Ok, so hulle wag vir die Rode Vos om te hoor wat presies is sy hand in die storie. Hulle gaan verder, ek sê so, lees heel deur. Kom ek balanseer net gou my kameruitjie. Sy is baie beter. Today the prisoner Joachim Albertson appeared before the council once more. He confessed that there had been a plot to seize the galleot Rode Vos at the time when the Hof van Zeeland was lying here, and the galleot had been ordered to go to the Hout Bay for firewood. No opportunity had presented itself at the time. However, as the skipper constantly remained on board and the mate went to and fro, had they wished to do so, they could have overpowered the latter, but they had no intention of killing anybody, but only of seizing the galleot while the skipper was somewhere on shore. In her they intend setting off for Brazil or elsewhere. Teunus Auksin, who lost his life and who understood navigation, would have brought them thither. He, together with Buisman, found dead, were the principal authors of the plan. He, the prisoner, had all the time restrained the others. If he had wished, he declared, the plan would have been put into effect a long time ago. There were too many obstacles in their way, however, and they could never come to a decision. He was accordingly quite glad when he was ordered to remain on land the last time the said galleot left on a voyage, and consequently could not be bothered any further by the matter by the aforesaid deceased persons. When he was asked further why he had not informed the commander of all the foregoing, he replied that he had not dared to, but had thought that if it was not spoken of any more, it would sink into oblivion. His pale and sorrowful face was full of remorse, and he requested that the matter not be made to weigh too heavily against him. This can be seen more fully from the signed confession. So hierdie ouens hy het net daaroor gepraat, hy het niks actually gedoen nie. Mense, hier is 'n stuk van 'n renoster. En ek het gedink, ek gaan dit lees, ek is jammer. Al is dit nou vanaand ook 'n 2 ure livestream, ek wil dit graag lees. Fine weather and wind as before, one of the salt gatherers came to report to us that they had shot a rhinoceros in the salt pans. It was still alive and had sunk so deep into the mud of the salt pans that it could not extricate itself. So out of curiosity, we went to the place, about 4 or 5 miles from here. Finding it still alive, we had it shot dead. But had the animal been on hard ground, we should not have been able to do it much or any harm at all by shooting, as more than 100 shots had to be fired before we could kill it. 100 skote om 'n renoster plat te trek. Many of the bullets rebounded from its body. Dit smaak my die gewere daai tyd was nie so sterk gewees nie. Particularly from its side, so that we had a piece hewn out of its side with axes, and then by shooting it between the ribs and into the guts, we managed to kill it. So hulle moes 'n stuk van die vel afgekap het en binne in daardie gat ingeskiet het voordat hulle die renoster kon uitvat. Our men had already gathered a good quantity of salt into heaps, which we hope to bring home one of these days when it blows so hard that we cannot do anything else. Ok, daar lees hulle nou van die renoster. Ek het dit nou maar net interessant gevind. Ek hoop maar julle vind dit ook interessant. At midday, ons lees nou van skepe wat hier aankom. At midday, they came safely to anchor here the ship, gekroonde leeuw of the chamber Enkhuizen. She had had about 50 dead and had more than 100 still sick. So sy het 'n baie moeilike vaart gehad. 50 van die bemanning is dood, 100 is sick. This evening we also gave the galliot Thom her dispatch to proceed to the Dassen Island and bring us with all possible speed all the train oil from there, in order, if possible, to send it to Batavia with the above mentioned ship. So ons het al klaar goed Batavia toe stuur van die goed ons in die Kaap gekry het. The galliot Rode Vos arrived safely in the roadstead in the afternoon from the Bay of Saldanha, and the Dassen Island with about 8,000 sealskins. The skipper reported that the galliot Thom was lying at the Dassen Island busy taking in train oil. He also brought some papers and attestations relating to the looting of the said galliot. Nou, hulle praat hier van Lambert Steenhagen. Wat is sy storie nou weer? Daar was 'n ou Lambert Steenhagen op die gekroonde leeu. Nou maar hy het glo aangejaag op die vaartog, en daar's 'n klomp mense dood of wat ook al. En hulle het vir Jan van Riebeeck gesê dat Jan van Riebeeck moet sy verhoor nasien, want die mense op die skip is so kwaad vir hom. Hulle is bang, hulle gaan hom te erg straf, sodat dit unbiased kan wees, jy weet. Sodat die ou regverdige verhoor kan kry, hierdie Lambert ou. Ek gaan nie vir julle al die details daar lees nie. In the evening, the aforementioned galliot Thom also arrived safely with 8 lagers of train oil, which we ordered to be transshipped to the gekroonde leeu to be taken to Batavia. So daar stuur ons nou 'n klomp train oil na Batavia toe. Wat is train oil in Afrikaans? Treinolie. Nee, dit kan nie wees nie. Jan Woutersen brief. Ok, hier is nou die briefiekie van Jan Woutersen af. Jy kan sien, hierdie ou is ook 'n redelike gatkruiper. Kyk hoe begin hy sy brief. Honorable, wise, provident and most discreet. En hier op die einde, your honest, dutiful servant. Hey, gatkruipers. Ok, hier kom ons nou weer by die bose plan. Dit is nou hier met diplomatie. Hoe kom ons eintlik die boek lees? We bartered a large ox from the Saldaners, but had a lot of trouble because the old tribe, Harry's allies, interfered again and incited the others, otherwise they would have been fairly keen to trade. It is therefore becoming more and more evident that these rogues are the cause of the other people more evident that these rogues are the cause of the other people from the interior not coming to us. It is difficult to know what else Harry makes them believe, but in any case, it is apparent that as long as these rogues have remained in this vicinity with their cattle, none of the other natives have dared to come there. These natives do not want to part with their cattle and sheep, although they have at least about 1,500 or 1,600 altogether. It is therefore our opinion, under correction of course, that it would not be out of place to deprive these rogues of their cattle and to remove their persons with their wives and children. Every day there is ample opportunity for this, and they have also thoroughly deserved it, having assisted in stealing our cattle, murdering the youth, and doing much mischief to our men every day. Ek sê oorlogpraatjies raak al hoe sterker soos wat die boek aangaan. Hier kom nou nog skepe aan. Ek glo hierdie skip was al hier gewees. Ek verbeel my, ek onthou sy naam, die Raak, lovely calm weather and westerly wind with which they arrived here safely, the ship Raak, with a cargo of sugar, pepper and sapanwood. Hulle is op pad terug na die vaderland toe, en ons glo baie rykdom. En hier word hierdie Joachim ou word toe gestraf. Today our council, augmented by the senior officers of the gekroonde leeu, sentenced the prisoners Joachim Albertson of Amsterdam, Boatswain's mate, and Hans Swanson of Masterland, arquebuser. Joachim is to be placed against the main mast of the galliot Rode Vos, with the rope around the neck, and to be kept in chains for 12 years. Die ou het net gepraat van 'n skipsteel. Hy het niks actually gedoen nie. Hy het net daarvan gepraat. Hy word vasgebind vir 12 jaar. Hans Swanson is to be keel-hauled and on the said galliot with 6 years in chains. The monthly wages of both the prisoners are to be confiscated in pursuance of the sentence passed. So hulle het 'n verskriklike straf ook daar gekry. 'n Verskriklike straf, net omdat hulle gepraat het van 'n skipsteel. Ok, nou, hier is nou die Lambert ou, wat van die ander skip afgekom het, van die gekroonde leeu af. For offences committed and for disobedience perpetrated against his superiors on the gekroonde leeu, the Sergeant Lambert Steenhagen, who had been serving in the said ship, was today, after the provisional suspension by his officers had been approved, further suspended for 3 months from his rank and pay. So daar's baie strafreg, die laaste, ons is nog steeds in Januarie 1655, ons het met nuwe jaar begin, ons is nog eers 'n maand in, hier het al bitter baie in die Kaap gebeur, veral in verband met die strafreg. Hier kom nou nog 'n skippietjie aan. Weather and wind as yesterday. In the afternoon, het ek hierdie stuk raak gelees. We gave the gallia Tilp her dispatch to the Dassen Island to fetch some skins. Net so 'n subnota. Nou kom hier nog skepe aan. Weather and wind as yesterday. In the forenoon, they arrived safely in the roadstead the yacht Terwyl with the vice commander Hubert Hugo. Nou wat sê hulle onder van Hubert Hugo? Hulle sê, this is probably the Hubert who was head of the Dutch trading post in Ahmadabad. In 1654, he was a Fleming and married an Englishwoman. In later years, he became a pirate, the great French pirate Hubert Hugo. Sometimes Dutch, sometimes English, and always unmerciful. He was the commander of Mauritius from 1673 to 77. Net so 'n interessante side note, hier's groot name wat hier in die Kaap gestop het. The gallia Tilp returned today from the Dassen Island with 3,800 sealskins. So julle kan sien die bedrywighede by Dassen Eiland en Saldanha Bay is nou lekker aan die gang. The ship Gekroonde Leeu set sail from this bay to continue her voyage to Batavia. Nou maar toe daar uiteindelik, daar is die Gekroonde Leeu, nou hier so weg na 'n klomp drama. The officers of the ship Terwyl and Raak have also taken their leave in order to depart from here with the first favourable wind and sail to St. Helena and to wait for their company, namely the yachts Muitjen and Weesp, which they think may have passed by. Nou natuurlijk, hulle ry in dis 'n vloot wat saamvaar. Dis nie enkele skippies nie, hulle is deel van 'n vloot, maar hulle het so half opgebreek geraak en die ander skepe wil nou nie uitkom nie. If the Muitjen and Weesp have passed the Cape, we shall miss the horses and saddles that they had on board. For fetching firewood from the forest, these are as necessary from us as bread in the mouth, and we have therefore decided, on the advice of the officers of the said return ships, to send a gallia to accompany them to follow them shortly afterwards. Its mission will be to bring back the horses from St. Helena. So, Jan van Riebeeck sê, die perde is so belangrik, hy gaan 'n skip saamstuur St. Helena toe, om hierdie perde en sale te loop haal. Hulle het dit nodig om hout te kry van Houtbaai af. Hulle is nog besig om bakstene te bak, om huise en so aan te bou om die fort, rondom die fort. En as hulle nie hout het nie, kan hulle nie hierdie bakstene bak nie. Maar die hout is so ver, hulle het hierdie perde nodig om 'n wa te sleep. In the morning, fine weather, the breeze mainly northwesterly, with which they arrived safely in the afternoon, the ship Muitjen, with the commander Hubert Laries on board, and a fine, healthy crew. Dit smaak my, hulle dan vir die slag gesond hier so aangekom. At noon, the yacht Weesp arrived outside the bay, intending to enter by levering. But as the wind steadily increased in force, she had to sheer off and run before the wind to the Robben Island, where good anchoring ground is to be found. Saw her, however, passing to leeward and of the island and keeping close to the wind, heading for sea again. So die Muitjen het ingekom en hier gekom stop. Maar die skip wat actually die perde op het, is die Weesp. Nou maar die Weesp wou ingekom het, toe was die wind in die water te rof gewees, toe gaan die Weesp weer terug oopsee toe. Hulle het nie anker gooi by Robben Eiland nie, en nou is die ander twee skippies, hulle is nou al klaar op pad St. Helena toe, so dis nou al 'n hele deur mekaar spul. In elk geval, hulle perde is op die Weesp, en die Weesp kan nie in die baai inkom nie. Dit was nou al vroeg in die maand, dis op die eerste al gewees, hier trek is al by die 9de, hier sê hulle niks van die skip nie. In the morning, fine calm weather, as there was a light breeze from the southeast and the Weesp had not yet put in an appearance, the Honourable Lares set sail with the yacht Mädchen and got out the bay quite well, intending to wait for the former ship at St. Helena and then to continue their voyage together from there to the harbours of the beloved fatherland. Ok, ons gaan nou by die grootste kom. Die titel van hierdie, maar ek dink voordat ons nou by die titel kom, gaan ek almal teleurstel, eers 'n sigaretjie opsteek. Ek dink hierdie stukkie wat ek nou gaan lees, gaan nie baie goed sit met baie mense nie. Daar's een helfte van die debat wat gaan hande klap en sê, daar is sy, en daar's 'n ander helfte van die debat wat gaan sê, wat dalk eerder gaan stil bly. Ek wil graag hoor wat daai mense sê. Belwel Piet sê, ek moet die boekie vir my kry, dis moer interessant. Ek het vir die hele stel, daar was 3 stelle beskikbaar gewees online. Ek het vir my een van die stelle bestel. En ek weet nie of dit 3 verskillende plekke is wat dieselfde stel geadverteer het, en of miskien dat die ou paar menskies wat my follow, dat dit nou genoeg geraas was, dat die mense besef, hoorie so, dit is actually nog 'n cool boek, dat dit ewe skielik nou die ander stelle ook uitverkoop het, maar ek sien dit nie meer beskikbaar die ander stelle nie. So ek is bly, ek het vir my 'n stelletjie gekry, en ek is besig om hom toe te krap onder die potloodmerke. As iemand in die toekoms nie 'n probleem daarmee het, dan moet hy maar 'n uitveer vat en dit uitvee. Kyk of ek worry. Dalk miskien as ek met klaar is met die boek, dan sit ek hulle op auction. Leer jou geskiedenis, sodat jy nie die foute van die verlede herhaal nie. Daar is nog 'n ander sê ding wat sê dat die enigste ding wat ons leer van die geskiedenis, is dat mense niks leer van geskiedenis nie. Bebop Williams sê dit reën nou te lekker. In watter area is jy, Bebop Williams? Hierso is dit net mistig, dit lyk nie soos reën actually. Dit is wel baie bedompig. Mistig en bedompig. Kom ons kyk, wat het ek gemis? Nee, wat nie veel nie. Nou, Belwel Piet, waar is jy terug in Belwel, of waar is jy nou? Want hier in die Weskus reën dit nie op die oomblik. Ja, Pieter, jy sê so, jy leen die boeke met my. Ou maat, hierdie is nie 'n dun boekie nie. Hierdie is volume 1. In volume 1 is daar amper 400 bladsye. Ons trek nou amper by bladsy 300. Hier is volume 3. Hy is nog dikker as die res. Maar ek moet ook sê, hier aan die einde van volume 3 kan jy op naslaan as jy iemand se van of so iets wil soek. Hier is die indekse en daardie tipe goed. Die naslaan werk is hier op die einde. So hy is so 'n bietjie dikker as die res. Maar ek ben hier, ons trek nou by episode 18. Ek glo as ek hierdie boek op dieselfde pace doen, en ek maak alles klaar, dan gaan daar seker 60 episodes wees. Indien nie meer nie. Ek probeer 3 maande op 'n slag doen. Ek het hierdie keer net 2 maande gedoen, want daar was so baie inligting gewees. Julle kan sien ek is langer as 'n uur besig, al het ek baie bollie ook gepraat tussentyd. Ek wil myne check, maar ek dink my voorvaders het weggekruip. Daar is plekke waar jy kan naslaan, daar's baie rekords online. Gaan krap net so 'n bietjie. Daar's ouens wat databases maak van hierdie tipe goed. Ek is nogal verbaas, want dit lees soos 'n boek, 'n leesboek, 'n avontuurboek. Hier waar hulle loop renoster jag het, in uitvaar Saldanha toe, en dit lees soos 'n alles is 'n dagboek, dit lees soos 'n avontuurboek. Baie interessant, baie interessant. Brendan Campbell se mense het geland in Natal. Was dit deel van die 1820 settlers nie? Okay. Nou is dit die grootte. Ek hoef nie dit te doen, ek kan net so maak. Sê. Okay, ons moet hierdie, mense onthou hierdie datum, dis Februarie, die 10de Februarie, 1655. Hierso is die nannas nou. Kom ek stel sommer hierdie kamera, dis mooi in fokus kry. Dat die ouens kan screenshots vat. Ek dink hier gaan 'n paar screenshots van hierdie bladsy. In the morning, fairly strong southeasterly winds, our men from the forest came to report that the place was full of natives, who had very few cattle and who molested them a great deal, both on the road and in the forest. The men accordingly asked for more soldiers to protect them and their carpenters' tools, as they could hardly keep these safe from the Hottentots any longer. They also stated that the natives had given them to understand that they intended to come to our fortress in large numbers and look for a good opportunity of attacking us and robbing us of copper, of which we have a large quantity at the fort. In reply to this, the natives were told that we were willing to give them copper for their cattle, and thus trade with them in friendship. They answered, however, that we were living upon their land, and they perceived that we were rapidly building more and more as if we intend never to leave. And for that reason, they would not trade with us for any more cattle, as we took the best pasture for our cattle. This the strandlopers here at the fort have also told us time and again in broken English. Nou ek weet daar's 'n groot debat online van ja, maar was daar 'n persepsie gewees van grondeienaarskap in daardie tyd? Hier kan ons nou lees op die 10de Februarie 1655 het Jan van Riebeeck vir die Lords and Masters geskryf, duidelik dat die mense het definitief 'n begrip gehad van grondeienaarskap in daardie dae. Will consequently have to keep a closer watch than before in order not to be caught unawares through overconfidence by a surprise attack, as happened with the theft of our cattle. Indeed, the natives are becoming so bold that we are almost forced to do our work with a tool in one hand and a weapon in the other, all the time, or at least to post soldiers with each worker and almost everywhere, or else they cause our men the greatest annoyance in the world. Only last night it happened that about 50 of these natives wanted to put up their huts close to the banks of the moats of our fortress, and when told in a friendly manner by our men to go a little further away, they declared boldly that this was not our land, but theirs, and they would place their huts wherever they chose. Dit klink omtrent soos Julius Malema. If we were not disposed to permit them to do so, they would attack us with the aid of a large number of people from the interior and kill us, pointing out that the ramparts were only constructed of earth and scum. Nou, hulle gee so klein, daai scum maak eintlik heeltemal sin nie. Hulle sê dit, hulle kon dalk miskien bedoel het dat die fort se mure half skuins is. Daar's nie baie duidelikheid daaroor nie. And could easily be surmounted by them. That they also knew how to break down the palisades. It is therefore becoming more and more evident that to us these rogues are emboldened by the kind treatment. En dis het ek nou van die begin afgesien het. And whether Harry may be conspiring with the people in the interior of the company's prejudice is difficult to tell. At any rate, one can surmise that he is doing little good. We should therefore take good care and every precaution, as said before, that we are not unexpectedly attacked. It is indeed true that the fort would not easily be taken by them, but since all our men have their hands full and are steadily occupied with their work, with hardly anyone so far being spared for separate guard duty, they would be able to massacre us almost to a man. We have therefore divided the men into 3 watches, one of which is to mount guard fully armed every third night, and nevertheless carry on with its appointed work during the day. Some are also to keep guard separately, some in the gateway and others in searching the bushes all round the fort for Hottentots that might be gathering in secret somewhere. We shall thus prevent them from surprising our men at work, of which we are becoming more apprehensive every day. More particularly because we can see from the large number of fires burning everywhere that the land hereabouts is full of Hottentots, and our men, without giving any provocation, suffer more annoyance from them even close to the fortress. We dare not, however, resist them too much, as we still enjoy to a fair extent the convenience of their assistance in fetching firewood, although we almost have to beg and beseech them to do so. And whether the whim seizes them, they simply refuse altogether. In that case, almost all our men have to work and tire themselves almost to death carrying wood in order to keep the cook's pot boiling, as the wood nowadays, right up against Table Mountain, has to be fetched fully a mile, and even so is quite scarce. The horses from Batavia would therefore be most useful, as our firewood could then be fetched with wagons fairly easily over flat country about 2.5 to 3 miles from the fort. Oef. Gaan ons aan met nog 'n bietjie diplomatie. In the afternoon, a few ogenade. In the afternoon, a few of Harry's allies brought a beast which we traded from them, after much bargaining, for about 7.5 pounds of copper plate and some tobacco. They gave us to understand that they were on the point of leaving, as large numbers of other natives from further inland were on their way hither with many cattle. Our men from the forest, returning home towards evening, brought us confirmation of the departure of these natives, having seen them decamping with all their little huts. Time will show what is to follow on this. In the meantime, we are in any case having a closer watch kept in order not to be surprised by this multitude, for there is no telling what trouble Harry, who is an artful rogue, jy maak nog 'n nota, Harry is 'n 2-6, who is an artful rogue, may have been brewing among them. En nuus van Sint Helena af, Sondag die 14de Februarie 1655. Rough, boisterous weather from the south-southeast as before. The skipper of the Tulp managed to come ashore, however, during a brief calm spell. We gave him his dispatch for the voyage to St. Helena to fetch from there the horses and the box with saddles for this place. Ons het vroeër daaroor gepraat, hoekom hulle St. Helena toe moet gaan vir die perde. A side note, sent the crew of the Rode Vos and some men from shore with the sampan to the saltpan 4 miles up the Salt River. Ek moet net weer onderstreep, dit is my te oulik, hierdie sampan, dit klink soos 'n oosterse woord, want dit is inderdaad 'n oosterse woord, dit is daai klein skippies, waarop die reisboere staan, daai plat skippies. Hulle het ons daardie boustruktuur van hulle geneem, ons het ons eie sampanne gebou hier aan die Kaap. Op die 16de Februarie, we see many fires burning all along the coast to the north, from which we summarize that there are many natives with cattle and at and near the Bay of Saldanha. It was therefore resolved today to send the junior merchant Frederik Verburg, die nommer 1 gatkruiper, in the galliot Rode Vos once again to the said bay with copper and tobacco to try to purchase cattle and sheep. En hier kom nou nog 'n klomp skepe aan. A ship was seen outside the bay, but on account of the strong winds, she could not enter. Towards noon, the westerly wind freshening somewhat, the aforesaid ship Malacca came into the bay. The ship had very few sick, although scurvy has started among the crew. So gaan nie te sleg op Malacca nie. En hier kom nog 'n skippietjie. Early in the morning we saw a ship close to the land. Praise God, she came safely to anchor at noon. She is the Olifant, which had left on 6 August in the company with the Hof van Zeeland. Nou die Hof van Zeeland was 'n maand 2-3 terug, was al klaar hier gestop. And had been forced, being in great peril in a storm, to touch in Brittany. And afterwards, on account of sickness and scurvy among the crew, at Sierra Leone, from whence the voyage here had taken 5 months. Dis hoekom die skip so erg agter geraak het. She still had a fairly healthy crew, although scurvy was increasing somewhat among the men. But with the abundance of refreshments to be obtained here, it will soon, with God's help, be eradicated. And within 8 or 10 days, the ships will be ready to depart on their appointed voyage to Batavia. In the afternoon, the wind came from the northwest, enabling her easily to sail into the bay, but then the wind shifted to the south-southeast, and she had to anchor just outside the roadstead. She was the ship Wapen van Holland. She has very few sick on board, the scurvy among the crew only just starting. So die mense kom nog steeds siek hier aan, maar nie te ergie. Dit lyk actually baie beter. Nou vir die mense wat wil saamlees vir die res van die maand, en ek het sommer hierso 'n aantekening gemaak dat ek wil van Maart af episode 19 doen. Eers van Maart af. Nou daar het julle dit. Daar is die belangrike deel, daar is definitief 'n begrip gewees van grond eienaarskap tussen die plaaslike inboorlinge. En ek het eendag vir Terra Lakota gehoor praat in 'n toespraak, waar hy gesê het, ja maar, hulle het hulle huisies gekom bou teen die fort, en gesê, ja maar hierdie is hulle plek, in protes. Ek dink, Terre, waarvan praat jy? Want ek het nog nie so raak gelees nie. Maar kan julle sien, ons is nou amper by die einde van die eerste boek. So dit is nou waar daardie storie uitgekom het, heel op die einde. Want ek kom dalk so omdraai dat meer sin maak. Heel op die einde van die boek. Van die eerste volume. Ok, kom ek. As ek 'n reekie dan afsluit. Brendan Campbell vra, wat se tipe sodomiet dislike 'n Klipkop video? Dit is dalk iemand wat nie hou daarvan dat ek vir Frederik Verburg 'n gatkruiper noem nie. Of dalk was dit iemand wat nou nie daarvan gehou het dat ek nou daardie stukkie raak gelees het. Dat daar definitief 'n begrip was van grond eienaarskap in die 1650s nie. Ei swart ouwe ma se kinders, jy kom vang die gatkant van die storie. Ek is al besig met my tata bye sigaretjie. Die Belwel Piet moet eers 'n chila vang. Nou maar dis reg Belwel Piet. Dis reg. Ek sien jou volgende keer. Maar mense, as dit is, gaan ek nie hier vir julle sit en maak kyk hoe ek 'n sigaret oprook nie. Belwel Piet is weer terug, maar ek gaan nou waai Belwel Piet. Hoe lyk jy daai ene? Jy het die hele show gekry. Ek dink dit is presies wat ek gaan doen. Die ouens wat lus vir 'n bietjie Discord, ek sê julle wat, ek gaan vanaand so 'n bietjie op die Discord sit, kan ons weer kom chat. Ek weet ek was lanklaas op die Discord. So ek gaan nou vir Groovy oplaai op die Discord, ek gaan ou PB treffers oplaai, so 'n bietjie DJ wat ook al. As julle wil saamkom, kuiere wat ook al, kom doen dit. Otherwise sien ek vir julle op die laaste weer Sondag aand. Mense, ek wil vir julle sê, daar is absoluut geen skaamte daarin om jou kop uit jou gat te trek. Ons moet opstaan vir daardie mense wat vir ons opstaan. En dit is altyd volhard en hou koers.